Good morning. I Screwed Up by Lily Nealon. Actually, I never called it Columbus Day growing up in Argentina. It was always called Dia de la Raza, and today I think it's called Dia del Respeto a la Diversidad Cultural. My vote? I think we should all pick another day, a day that has nothing to do with the rape, pillage, and plunder of any culture. Now, how about that for a novel idea? This week, the most emailed article in the New York Times was the fact that 158 families in the US have provided just about half of the early money for the race to the White House, which I guess is the new game in town. 158 families. And you know what? I'll give the Quote of the Week award to the writers of that story, who said that these donors are mostly, quote, white, rich, older, and men in a nation that is being remade by the young, women, and by black and brown voters. Unquote. Ouch. I also can't say that this last week was a happy week for me. That, the couple of more shootings, a couple more ridiculous comments by politicians, in particular Ben Carson, who told us how to defend ourselves from these shootings. And there was that terrible and sad bombing during a peace march in Ankara. And then, last but not least, the House of Representatives in the US, who drive me nuts because they can't even figure out how to elect a speaker while not making fools of themselves. And no, apart from that, I did not enjoy the show. But I guess the big news this week was the announcement of the so-called TPP, which stands for Try Pooping on My Parade, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership. What's fascinating about all this is all the people going nuts. While we really don't have all the details, apparently the document is being scrubbed to make sure that in every language, and I think there's a dozen languages in which it has to be written, that it all comes together and it all says the same thing in every language. We don't even have a timeline for a vote in the US, and many are saying that it may be after the presidential elections in 2016. This is really the US at its best. But what about free trade? I, for one, have always been an advocate of free trade. I mean, in my ability to buy, sell, and do anything I want anywhere in the world. Is it my utopia or my dystopia? I don't know. Bernie Sanders says that it's the worst thing that could ever happen, and that there we go again, kowtowing to big business and not paying attention to the woman in the street. Just remember, I'm not an economist or a fortune teller, but if the basic principle of free trade is to allow consumers all over the world to acquire goods and services at the best global price, then welcome to globalization, right? The counterpoint is the fear, and it's real indeed, that US corporations will move abroad in order to seek lower wages, therefore driving US wages even lower. But you know what? What else is new? I mean, do you read labels in your clothing and everything else you buy? Do you see that US corporations are making their stuff anywhere, anyway? This is before this free trade agreement. And going back to NAFTA 20 years ago, yeah, I think there were some documented job losses in the US, maybe as much as 1 million job losses, but there has never been proven that there's a direct link. And maybe the US had a really bad cold before NAFTA and then caught the flu afterwards, and now we can just blame it on NAFTA. Again, I'm not an economist. The value of free trade was first observed and documented by Adam Smith in 1776. He wrote this: "It is the maxim of every prudent master of a family never to attempt to make at home what it will cost him more to make than to buy." And he goes on to say, if a foreign country can supply us with a commodity cheaper than we ourselves can make it, better buy it of them with some part of the produce of our own industry, employed in a way in which we have some advantage. I guess the key word is our own industry. Okay. Net, I really have no idea. I like free trade. Margaret Thatcher was a big advocate of free trade, and in 1994, at one of the trade meetings, I think in Uruguay, she said that trade is the oldest form of exchange known to man. From ancient times, it was the most natural form of daily cooperation between peoples, whether it be in the smallest village or the largest marketplaces. The marketplace is not the invention, she goes on to say, of some academic economist. It is the daily habit of the people. And then she goes on to say that, we still, again, in 1994, we still had to convince popular opinion in Europe and the United States that opening markets to foreign goods and services raises living standards and generates jobs. She is right. We still have to convince, and we still need proof. Anyway, again, we don't know when this is going to come to vote. So, you know what? Ignore all the rhetoric, including mine. And the markets. I almost forgot about the markets. The smell or the stench of VW is still in the air. And I almost gave the quote of the week to VW's US president, who said, "We screwed up." Really? We screwed up. I just can't believe it. Anyway, I'm curious to see what else comes out of all this. Not just for Volkswagen, but watch out for other automakers, foreign and domestic, who may have also screwed up. And you probably all know, so I don't want to bore you with details, that US stocks had a nice week last week. Some attribute the gains to renewed investor confidence that the Fed will not raise rates this year. And you know what? You heard it here first, folks. So keep listening. Lots of news coming out this week. Retail sales on Wednesday, CPI on jobless claims on Thursday, industrial production on Friday. But I think the main event is going to be bank earnings reports. And I think that begins with JP Morgan tomorrow. Most analysts believe that bank earnings are going to be better than expected. And as an old dog in foreign exchange, I'm hoping some of those young masters of the universe will have taken advantage of all the currency swings in the last quarter and made a lot of money to add to the bottom line of all those banks. You know what? The market is probably going to sell the bank stocks after the good news, because, that's what happens. And since you always ask, and I always have an opinion, the future, what to buy, what stocks to look out for, you know what? I think the answer may be up in the clouds. Think about it. This is A View from Abroad. Thanks for listening.